If you ever find a ski run that's not on the map, but looks perfectly groomed, perfectly empty, and somehow more inviting than anything else on the mountain, don't take it. If you're already on it, if you've already pushed off, felt that perfect pull of gravity, the way your skis lock into the fall line like they've been waiting for this exact angle, I'm sorry, that's where I am. I'm not sure which run this is for you, what they're calling it this season. For me, they didn't call it anything at all. That's how it starts. No name, just snow. I'm recording this on my phone in a hotel room in the Alps that I don't think I've reached yet. That sounds insane, I know, but that's the problem with this mountain. Yet, stops meaning what you think it means. Outside my window, everything looks like a postcard. Picture it. A little village glued to the side of the Alps, roofs sagging under snow, warm yellow light bleeding from chalet windows, a church steeple stabbing up into a purple-blue sky. There's a line of gondola cabins swinging quietly on the cable, lit from within like lanterns. If I press my forehead to the cold glass, I can see the main run's bright white stripes carved into the dark slope, dotted with ants that are actually people. You've probably seen a dozen places like this in glossy travel ads. That's why I booked it. The resort is called Sankt Edda. I found it at 3 a.m. in a haze of doom scrolling and treat-yourself impulsivity. Solo trip, late season, quiet, cheap package, decent reviews. The kind of place burned-out people pick when they decide they're going to reset their lives with fresh air and overpriced cocoa instead of therapy. I'm not a great skier. I grew up going on those weekend trips where half your time is spent falling and the other half is spent pretending you're not terrified. I'm competent enough to get down a red run without dying, bad enough that no one would accuse me of being advanced. That's important. Because this wasn't an extreme skier thing. This wasn't a secret locals-only couloir or some adrenaline junkie's off-piste fantasy. It was built for me. The first 2 days at Sankt Edda, nothing was wrong. I want you to understand that part. There were no creepy portents, no ominous locals muttering warnings over their beer, no ghost stories in the lodge. There was snow, crisp, clean, late-season corduroy in the mornings that turned to mashed potatoes by afternoon. There was the smell of cheap coffee and sunscreen and rental boots. There were kids in neon snowsuits eating snow off mittens, couples taking selfies on the lifts, ski instructors in matching jackets doing that effortless S-turn thing that makes the rest of us look like we're doing taxes with our legs. I stayed mostly on the blues and easy reds marked on the map. Edelweiss, Kirsch, Himmelweg. You know the type names chosen to sound cute and harmless. At night, I went back to my little single room with the sloped ceiling and the radiator that hissed like it had opinions. I'd sit on the bed with my feet still thawing out, scrolling through people having better lives than me, telling myself that at least I'd gone outside. The only weird thing, if I'm really honest, was the map. Every resort has those giant piste maps, bright, cartoonish illustrations of the mountain with runs drawn in colored lines. They always flatten everything, make it look fun and friendly. There was one like that here, pinned up by the front desk and printed on paper in my little welcome pack. I checked it obsessively the first day, tracing routes with my finger. Blue runs here, red there, black runs spidering off near the top that I had no intention of ever touching. But there was this gap between a red called Blutspur, which I thought was a weird name, until someone told me it just meant blood trail as a joke, which didn't help, and a closed-off face where they were supposedly blasting for avalanche control. There was a blank white space. Not unusual, right? Mountains are full of blank white spaces. It was just the way my eyes kept sliding back to it. Like the map was avoiding something. Like the lines around that patch of white curved outward a little too neatly, like they were flowing around a rock in a river. I told myself I was imagining it. You don't come on a solo trip to the Alps to develop main character syndrome about a ski map. The first time I saw the trail, I thought it was just a trick of distance. I was on the chairlift up to the mid-station, a slow double that creaked endearingly and made my thighs ache from the pressure of the bar. It was late afternoon. The sun was already dropping toward the serrated peaks across the valley, turning the snow that weird blue that looks soft and deadly at the same time. Below me, the marked runs twisted and intersected in predictable patterns, wide groomers with little colored poles sticking up along the edges, clusters of skiers standing in the middle of everything for no reason, the occasional snowboarder carving dramatic arcs. Then, off to the right, past a line of scraggly fir trees, I saw it, a strip of immaculate white, cutting cleanly down the mountain like someone had taken a ruler to it. No moguls, no tracks, no poles, no sign, just a perfectly groomed fall line. You know what ski runs look like after a day of use. Scarred, chopped up surfaces, weird dips where someone fell, those ugly scraped patches of ice. This wasn't like that. This looked like it had just been laid down by the piste bâchée, smooth corduroy ridges catching the last light. I craned my neck, trying to see where it started, where it ended. From the lift, it seemed to appear from nowhere, drop steeply through the trees, and vanish into a fold of the mountain. I checked the map board at the top. No such run. I even asked one of the lifties, a guy in a red jacket with a beard, iced over from breathing out in the cold. Is there a piste over there? I pointed in the rough direction of the mystery slope. He shrugged. Off-piste only, he said. Not for tourists. He said tourists, with the weary tenderness of someone who's seen too many people try to be cooler than they are. I nodded, pretended that had been enough to satisfy me. It wasn't. You think you're smarter than horror movie characters until you realize you've spent an entire evening zooming in on your phone photos, trying to find a trail that isn't supposed to exist. I'd snapped a picture from the lift without really thinking about it. That night, sitting cross-legged on the bed with the glow of my phone painting the ceiling, I pulled it up. It took me a while to find the run in the image. That should have been my first clue. It didn't jump out the way it had on the mountain. On the screen, it was just a slightly lighter band between trees. If I moved the photo around, it almost seemed to shift. Once I found it though, yeah, that was no random patch of snow. It was too straight, too clean, too intentional. I pinched and zoomed until the pixels broke apart. No signposts, no orange fencing, no avalanche warning markers, nothing, just white. I slept badly that night. Not because I was scared, God. I wish I'd been scared, but because my brain wouldn't shut up. What if it's an old run they closed? What if it's locals only? What if it's actually the best snow on the mountain and you're going to go home and read a forum post about the secret run at Sankt Edda and hate yourself forever? Here's the thing you need to know about me. I am not brave. I am, however, extremely suggestible. Curiosity sits in the exact same part of my brain as self-destruction. With Diverend, day 3, I told myself I would just look. You know that lie, right? Just looking, just seeing, just checking it out from a distance. I took the same lift, heart stuttering a little as we approached the section where I'd seen the slope. I told myself that if it looked sketchy, too steep, too narrow, too obviously off-piste, I'd drop the whole thing. From above, in the morning light, it was somehow even clearer. The world was sharp that day, no fog, no wind, the kind of crystalline air that makes your lungs sting and your teeth ache. I could see every tree, every shadow. The regular runs were already full of crisscrossing lines, scraped patches glinting like glass, tiny figures queuing at intersections. In the middle of all that chaos, a pure white tongue of snow, untouched, sliding down between the trees, like it was waiting. The top, I realize now, was actually accessible from the main network. There was a point where Blutzber split near a stand of trees, and a little rock outcrop. If you cut hard right, instead of following the red run's smooth arc, you could slip into the mouth of the mystery trail. You wouldn't even have to duck a rope. No warning signs. No closed markers. Just a choice. At the top, I stood at that fork for a long time. Left. The wide, red run, full of people doing their careful, cautious arcs. Right. A narrow gap between trees where the snow curved out of sight. I wish I could tell you there was a big supernatural shove, that something whispered my name, or the air went cold, or I heard phantom skis scraping behind me. Nothing like that. Just me, my own breath, loud in my ears, my thighs burning from the last run, my brain doing its stupid little cost-benefit analysis. It's probably fine. It's probably just an old piece they don't advertise. Look at it, it's groomed. Somebody maintains it. If it were dangerous, there'd be signs. You can always stop and hike back up if it feels wrong. I went right. Of course I did. By dawn, the first thing that struck me was the sound, or rather, the lack of it. On the main runs, there's always noise. Edges scraping, kids yelling, music bleeding out from somewhere, the distant clatter of the lift machinery. Even in quiet pockets, you still hear the mountain's background hum. Here? As soon as I slipped off the main trail and into the slot between the trees, the sound snapped off like someone had closed a door. My skis carved the first marks into the corduroy. That should have been exhilarating. Every skier secretly wants first tracks. That's the dream, right? Untouched snow, the feeling that you're drawing the line yourself. Instead, a wrongness prickled at the base of my skull. It wasn't anything I could name. The slope was perfect. Not too steep, not too flat, wide enough to make good turns, narrow enough to feel intimate. The trees flanked it at a respectful distance, their branches heavy with snow that didn't shed onto the piste, as if they'd agreed not to interfere. I did a few tentative turns, testing the surface. It was like skiing on a groomed cloud. No ice, no hidden chunks, no death cookies, just a smooth, forgiving surface that caught and released my edges, like it had been tuned specifically for my skill level. I should have loved it. I hated it. Not immediately. The first 20 seconds or so, there was just the pure physical joy of motion. You know that moment when your body remembers that it knows how to do this? Knees flexed, weight forward, upper body quiet, legs doing the work. For a little while, I let muscle memory take over. Then I realized I'd been skiing longer than made sense. The trail didn't intersect with anything. It just kept going, bending gently left, then right, then left again, always framed by the same kind of trees, the same slope of the hillside. I tried to spot landmarks, a particular rock, a distinctive snag of branches, a lift tower in the distance. Nothing, just that immaculate white ribbon, always dipping just enough that you couldn't see more than a few seconds ahead. My thighs were starting to burn. I checked my watch. I'd been on the run for almost 4 minutes. That doesn't sound like much, but on a mountain this size, with the lift layout I'd studied, it didn't fit. Runs had lengths, vertical drops. They occupied space. You couldn't just have a slope that went on and on without bumping into a lift line or a cat track or at least another piste crossing. I slowed. Snow hissed under my skis. The only other sound was my own breathing, echoing weirdly in my helmet. The trail curved left again. The trees opened up a little. There, ahead of me, was another skier. Relief punched through me so hard it hurt. I wasn't alone. Some other idiot had found the secret run too. They were maybe 50 meters ahead, same line, same speed, cutting careful arcs down the slope. "Hey!" I called, hoping my voice didn't sound as shaky as it felt. The skier didn't react. They were wearing a dark jacket, light pants, helmet, goggles, generic ski silhouette. Their turns were familiar, hesitant at first, then more confident. Weight a little too far back on the steeper bits, arms too rigid. They looked like me from the outside. That thought flickered through me, and I pushed it away as ridiculous. I dug my poles in, picked up speed, trying to close the distance. The trail dipped. I lost sight of them for a second. When I came over the lip, they were gone. The piste ahead of me was pristine again. No tracks, no sign of another skier. Just unbroken corduroy, shining faintly in the strange, shadowless light. That's when the fear finally caught up with the motion. I tried to stop. My skis resisted. It wasn't physical. Exactly. The snow was still snow. If I forced my edges in, they bit. If I leaned hard, I could slow. But there was a pull under all of it. A subtle insistence in the slope itself, like the fall line wasn't a direction but an intention. Down, it said. Down, and down, and down. My watch buzzed. I glanced at it, desperate for some kind of anchor. The screen was blank, just for a second. Then it flickered back to life. 13:07. Okay, early afternoon. That made sense. I'd caught the lift just after lunch. I'd done a couple of runs. Hadn't I? A memory slid out from under my mental grip, slippery as ice. I tried to remember the run I'd taken before this one. Edelweiss? Himmelweg? How many times had I gone up the chair? My brain returned a static hiss. My stomach lurched. I forced myself into a full stop, panting, heart pounding in my ears. Silence. No wind. No distant lift clatter. No whoops from other skiers. Just the mountain, waiting. Behind me, my tracks were the only scars on the snow. Ahead of me, the trail curved, gently out of sight. I could take my skis off, I thought. That was the rational option. Unclip, shoulder them, climb back up. The slope wasn't that steep. Hiking would suck, but it was doable. I turned carefully, facing uphill, and looked at the line I'd carved. It didn't go straight back. It zigzagged, sure, but the overall path should have led up to the gap where I'd left Blutspur above. Instead, my tracks disappeared into the trees. Not in a natural way, not like I drifted off the piste. They just vanished. One moment, there were two crisp, parallel lines and a series of S-curves. The next, a smooth, untouched surface leading between the firs. No sign anyone had ever crossed that boundary. I stared until my eyes watered. My brain did that thing again, where it reached for an explanation and found none that fit. Maybe there's a drop there and you can't see the rest of the tracks. Maybe the light is bad. Maybe. When you don't have a maybe you can live with, you go for the one that hurts the least. Down, then, just to the bottom. There has to be a bottom. Wise. I don't know how long I was on that run. At some point, the trees thinned. The slope opened up slightly, flattening. My legs were shaking. I couldn't feel my toes. The sky had shifted from bright blue to a dull, washed-out gray, like someone had slid a transparency over the world. I slowed, then stopped, chest heaving, and looked around. Something had changed. At first, I thought it was just the light. The edges of things were softer. The tree line blurred at the margins. When I turned my head too fast, there was a fractional lag, like my eyes were buffering reality. Then I realized what was missing. My tracks. The snow around me was untouched. I looked back uphill. Smooth. Perfect. Corduroy comb lines as far as I could see. I looked down. Same. My own presence on the mountain had been erased, even as I was still standing there. Panic came then, full body, hot and cold at once. I screamed. Not words, just a raw sound that tore my throat. The mountains swallowed it. The air tasted flat, thin, not like altitude thin, like someone had forgotten to season it with oxygen. My watch buzzed again. 13:07. The seconds ticked, but the hour didn't change. Stupidly, I pulled my phone out of my jacket pocket. No signal. The lock screen time. 13:07. I hit the power button to reboot. The screen went black. For a second, My reflection looked back at me. Then the screen flickered. Snow. Not the stylized, static kind. Actual snow, filling the frame. For a moment, I thought the camera was on, showing my skis, the piste, my legs. Then a figure slid into the frame, from above, as if the camera were lying on the slope and someone was skiing over it. They were in a dark jacket, light pants, helmet, goggles. They turned their heads slightly, toward the invisible lens. Even through all the gear, I knew it was me. I dropped the phone. It didn't hit the snow. It fell through it, like the surface was a screen, and my phone had been dragged behind it. End quote. I don't ski much after that point. That's the part where I usually lose people, when I'm trying to explain this. Because from here on, chronology gets wobbly. I remember things in loops. I remember being back at the fork with Blutspur, telling myself I wouldn't go right this time. I remember forcing myself left, down the marked red run, feeling the blessed scrape of other people's skis around me, hearing the lift whirring, the music from the bar at the bottom. I remember checking the map, jabbing my finger at the blank space, telling myself, see, there is no run there. I remember getting on the lift again. I remember looking down. The white strip was still there. Every time, the same. Sometimes, I tried not to look. I'd keep my eyes closed on the chair, hands clenched on the bar, counting the lift pylons, telling myself that when I got off, I'd go to a different part of the mountain entirely. When I opened my eyes, I'd be back at the top of Blutspur, the fork, waiting. Right, left, a choice. Sometimes I went left and still ended up on the mystery run. I don't know how that works spatially. I'd be doing my careful red run turns, following the markers, and then I'd look up and the world would have slid sideways. The poles would vanish. The trees would close in. The snow would smooth out under me, unmarked and too forgiving. Down again. Longer this time, or shorter. I started recognizing my own turns. That's the part that really did something to my brain. I'd be skiing and see tracks ahead of me, two exactly parallel lines and a set of tidy S-curves. And I'd feel relief someone else is here. Someone else did this. But then I'd flash on the pattern. The way I turn a little too sharp to the right, a little wider to the left, the tracks would match. If I tried to follow them exactly, they'd slip, just out of alignment, like you can never quite step into your own footprints. Once, I saw myself again. Not the back of some stranger that looked like me. Not a figure in the distance. Me, coming around a curve ahead, from the other direction. We both stopped at the same time. For a moment, we just stared at each other. It was like looking into a mirror that had seen too much. My goggles were scratched in the same place. There was a smear of something on my jacket sleeve in the same spot. My posture, my breathing, my fear, it all matched. We raised our poles in the same hesitant half-wave. Then, the other me smiled. It looked wrong on my face, too wide, too slow, not my timing. They turned and skied past me, close enough that their shoulder brushed mine, and as they slid by, I heard it. My own voice, bent through cold air and helmet padding. You'll get it right this time, it said. I didn't look back. Time. At some point, some iteration, I made it off the slope. I must have. I'm in the hotel room now, aren't I? I remember the receptionist's sympathetic smile when I came in shaking, mask of windburn on my face. I remember the taste of too sweet glühwein in the bar, the way the cheap cinnamon burned my throat. I remember the shower, standing under water that ran hot and hotter, waiting to feel warm and never quite getting there. I checked the piste map again. The blank space was still there. No new line, no hidden label, just the suggestion of a run where none was marked. I asked someone at the bar that night, a guy in his 50s with a permanent goggle tan and a band logo on his beanie. He looked like he'd done his share of stupid things on snow. Is there an old piste between Blutspur and the North Face? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He frowned. Used to be, he said. years back, before the avalanche. My skin tightened. What avalanche? He shrugged. Tour group went off-piste, got cocky. Snow came down and took half the trees with it. They closed that area. Not worth the risk, you know. Did they find them? I asked. He gave me the kind of look you reserve for people who ask questions they don't actually want the answer to. Some, he said. I went back to my room and didn't sleep. The next day, I told myself I wouldn't ski. I'd stay in the village, drink coffee, read, be normal. I lasted until noon. The mountain called. Not in a supernatural way, not whispering my name in the wind. It was just there, looming outside the window. The way a door you've left unlocked sits in the back of your mind. You start thinking about someone else walking through it. If I didn't go back, would that fix it? Or would someone else find the fork, see the perfect white slope, tell themselves they were just being adventurous? Would they end up on rails they couldn't see? So I went. That's the worst part. There's a version of this story where I got trapped by sheer bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong snowpack. But the truth is, I went back deliberately, over and over and over, trying to find the edge of it, trying to find the one choice that wouldn't slip into the same groove. Sometimes I'd stay in the hotel lobby until the lifts were almost closed, thinking that if I had less time, the run would be shorter. Sometimes I'd force myself onto other lifts, other parts of the mountain, chasing different lines. Sometimes I'd stand at the fork and scream until my throat hurt, as if volume alone could knock the world off its track. Sometimes, I swear, I stayed in my room all day, curtains drawn, gear untouched, and still, I remember snow under my skis. I remember the trees closing in. I remember the sound going quiet. I remember my watch, 13:7, every time. And you're probably wondering why I'm telling you this, like there's still something left to do. If the mountain has me on rails, if the trail rewrites space and time and whatever passes for causality up here, what's the point in leaving a message? I wondered that too. Then I started noticing the differences. They're small. The kind of details you'd miss if you weren't desperately searching for any sign that you're not completely at the mercy of whatever's under the snow. Sometimes, when I end up back at the hotel, the receptionist's hair is a different length. Sometimes, the artwork on the wall by the elevator is a slightly different print. Sometimes, my own reflection in the lobby mirror looks more tired than I remember, or less. Tiny divergences, branching off from the same central trunk. Like I've been here before, and before, and before, but the world hasn't snapped back perfectly each time. Hair grows. People move things. The glacier shifts a fraction of a millimeter, and that gives me this. A single, narrow window where I'm in this room, with my phone, with enough memory and enough fear to try one more thing, talking to you. Because here's what I've finally understood. The trail isn't just a place. It's a pattern. The mountain doesn't care about your name, your job, your tragic backstory. It cares about your tendencies. Do you follow the crowd or slip away to see what's beyond the ropes? Do you stay on the map, or do you look at blank spaces and wonder? Do you tell yourself that you're different, that you'll know when to stop, that you'll turn around if it feels wrong? All the mountain has to do is be a little bit better than whatever else you could be doing. A little quieter, a little emptier, a little smoother under your skis. It doesn't drag you. It lets you choose, over and over, until choosing becomes the habit you can't break. Until every fork ends with you going right. Until you're not a person anymore, you're just an object, rolling down the steepest part of the slope, following gravity, because gravity is easy. Maybe that's what happened to the tour group. Maybe they were careful, and trained, and knew the avalanche risks, and thought, just this once, just to see, just to say we did. And the mountain tilted the terrain a fraction of a degree under their feet. The mine. I don't know what the thing under the snow is. I've tried on different words for it. Curse, echo, loop, residual trauma of an avalanche. some glitch in whatever simulation we're all supposedly stuck in. Sometimes, when I'm on the mystery run, and the world has that weird, lagging quality, I feel like I'm skiing through a groove worn by decisions not just mine, but everyone's who's ever taken that line. You don't notice you're in a rut until the walls are high enough to block the view. You don't notice you're in a pattern until you try to step out of it and find that your muscles refuse. Whatever it is, it's hungry, not in a teeth and claws way, in a statistical way. It wants your likelihood. It wants to know what you'll do if it sets up the conditions just so. If it places the fork here, the blank on the map there, the too perfect slope just out of sight, it doesn't need to drag you under the snow to have you. It just needs you to keep coming back. Isprez. The room is darker now. I haven't turned on the light. There's just the bleed of the village outside and the pale glow from my phone screen. If I angle it right, I can see my own shadow on the wall, stretched and distorted. My ski pass is still in my pocket. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. I know that because my booking says checkout is the 26th. I know that because the church bells went wild earlier, and the kids in the hall were screaming about Santa in at least 3 different languages. I also know it because, in one of the versions of this timeline, I took a photo of my room calendar, December 24th, circled in red. Underneath, in my own handwriting, "Don't ski." I don't remember writing that, but my pen stroke is pretty distinctive, the same way my turns are. There's another photo in that same batch, taken in this room from near the door. In it, I'm sitting exactly where I am now. Same chair, same bedspread, same slouch. On the bedside table, propped against the lamp base, is a folded, pieced map. On the blank section between Blutspur and the north face, someone has drawn a line in red pen, a thin, straight tongue of color sliding down through the trees. Underneath, in gold ink that isn't mine, a single word, again, into. This is the part where I'm supposed to tell you I'm not going. That I'm going to stay in this room, curtains closed, ski pass snapped in half, boots unopened. That I'm going to out-stubborn a pattern older than I am. I want to say that. I want to believe it, but I can feel the pull already. Not just of the mountain, of the version of me who has already gone. The one who wrote "Don't ski" and did it anyway. The one who traced the hidden run onto the map like admitting it, made it more real. The one who gave up trying to find a path that didn't slip, eventually, into that too smooth slope. The one lying by the river in some other story, snow on their lashes, hand outstretched. You see how it happens? At some point, the difference between will and did gets thinner than an edge on ice, and that's where the trail lives. Not on the map. Between, you're not here. That's the only good thing about this. You're somewhere else. On your couch, in your car, in a room that doesn't smell like rented gear and old radiator dust. You're listening to this because you like scary stories, or because you couldn't sleep, or because the thumbnail had snow and you're tired of heat. You're not at Sankt Edda. You're not standing at the top of Blutspur, looking at a gap in the trees where the snow curves out of sight. Yet, so listen to me. If you ever go skiing here, somewhere else, anywhere, and you see a run that isn't on the map, if it looks too perfect, if it feels like it was made with you in mind, if the lifty shrugs when you ask about it and calls you tourist with that little half smile, if your friends say, "Come on, just once," or your curiosity says, "Just to see where it goes," don't. Take the crowded run. Take the boring one. Take the route that makes you feel mildly annoyed instead of weirdly chosen. Because once you've set your tips on that kind of slope, once you've felt how easy it is to let gravity decide for you, you won't be sure anymore if you're choosing your line, or if something else already drew it, and you're just tracing over it. Again,